Greetings, beautiful friends and fellow students of Japanese art. Today, let's examine some of these mysterious symbols in The Boy and the Heron using what we know about Japanese history and religion. The film visualizes a number of really cool Japanese beliefs, including this idea of a botanical level of the human soul. And I want to first just talk about the Wada Wada, who are described as baby human souls. These cute monsters that, from a design perspective, they, of course, connect to other cute characters with little legs in Japan, like Capybara-san, Sumiko Gurashi, and, of course, Mameshiba. And they connect to other characters developed by Miyazaki, but symbolically, on a symbolic level, they represent sperm, DNA, especially as they gather to form helixes to survive. It's interesting that they also ultimately become food, and they resemble shirako, fish semen, literally white children, a culinary delicacy in Japan. So they represent sperm, pure information, but they look more like rice grains and rice balls, and they're born from the leaves of plants. And this is where the film reveals something very mystical. That according to the Japanese religious imagination, human souls are rice spirits. And to understand why people are rice spirits, we need to look into the history of Japan. Evidently around 500 BC, pearly white stuff landed on a mountaintop in northern Kyushu alongside Jimmu, Japan's first emperor, the grandson of the gods, a farmer king. And the white seed was gifted to Jimmu by his grandmother, the sun goddess Amaterasu, who cultivated it in her heavenly fields. We've left history and entered myth. The grain is sometimes referred to as Jimmu's father, and it might be worth noting that there is a Gnostic version of Genesis where Sophia, God's mother, gifts humans a soul that she got from the real father in order to free us from Eden. According to Japanese anthropologist Emiko Onuki Tierney, Japanese rice, Jimmu's seed, so white and so perfect, will ultimately be used to legitimize Japan's monarchy, the superiority of the Japanese race, and the radiance of the skin. After all, we are what we eat, and Japanese rice is so beautiful. The great writer Tanizaki Junichiro says, "Each grain is a pearl." The Wada Wada look like pearls, pearl necklaces. In other words, in the mythic imagination, pearly white rice is petrified soul, delivered to the people through the ancestral land, itself understood as self-hardening onogoro, god ejaculate. In the mist, the islands fell to earth like lava from the tip of God's rod. And soul comes from semen, but semen comes from rice, and rice is God's semen. And this is all in the 8th century Kojiki and Nihon Shoki, the first written documents of Japan, which are filled with references to rice grains as souls, or as tiny stones containing souls, and when digested they transfer soul to the consumer. In one story, the grain is birthed through the sun's sister, the puking goddess Ukemochi, who's in charge of food. The moon visits her and becomes scared of Ukemochi, and he cuts her open, and as she dies, all kinds of grains come out of her orifices. Rice comes out of her guts, which is where the soul was believed to come from. It's where the fetus grows, it's where food turns into blood, into life, and farmers knew that feces makes great fertilizer. According to Onuki Tierney, this is why Japanese ritual suicide seppuku involves cutting open the stomach, harakiri. Opening the stomach releases the soul. This is probably why Wada Wada have to eat fish guts in order to grow. A little bit more about guts. Remember, when Mahito is learning how to be helpful, he cuts open a fish and is completely overwhelmed by its guts. It's one of the most beautiful and disgusting scatological sequences in any Ghibli film. It recalls David Lynch's Eraserhead baby and Yukio Mishima's famous description of harakiri from Patriotism. Quote, "The entrails burst through, as if the wound too were vomiting." End quote. And yes, at first it seems kind of crazy that in Japan guts and feces are the abode of the soul, not the head, Or the heart? Usually it's the head or the heart. Saying it's in shit is kind of absurd, sacrilege. And yet, scientists keep revealing just how important our gut microbiome is to our states of consciousness. Wada wada, or human souls, are botanical, seminal, and, as we find out at the end, scatological processes. Their white bodies connect human soul to rice spirits and to bird poop, and at the end, to bukkake. When during the final climax of the film, and there are several climaxes, in the final one, everyone gets covered in bird shit. The white part of bird shit is actually technically urine, made of digested wada wada. And we have to keep in mind that white stuff dripping down faces and chests means something very specific in the Japanese visual culture. And I'll talk more about bukkake at the end of the essay, but we should just note that getting shit on by a bird is gross and funny, but it's also good luck in Japan. The experience is so rare, comparable to being born in a precious human body, perhaps? Wada wada are therefore complex hieroglyphs, from hieros, sacred, and glyphin to carve. They're 4D hieroglyphs since we see them unfold through time, and it's by using this hieroglyphic language, the film hints that the creation of human souls resembles angels hooping in reverse. We witness liquid souls come up out of the ground and then float up into the sky to become food. And there's nothing else for the gods to eat, so the digested souls then fall to the ground like rain to be reabsorbed and resecreted. In this world, everything is backwards, though. Birds eat babies instead of deliver them. I wonder if this is because humans eat bird eggs in our world. And I'm not sure if it matters, but the wada wada look like the mesmerizing white goo seed worlds depicted in Miyazaki's The Day I Bought a Star from 2006, short film, and they look like the titular characters in Mr. Doe and Egg Princess from 2010. Both films are meant to only be seen at the Ghibli Museum, although you can catch clips online. And like Heron, they are parables about the secrets of life and origins of consciousness. When we blur our eyes, wada wada resemble the white flags floating above Natsuko's delivery bed, circling like birds, like aliens. These streamers are called shide in Japan. Strips of rice paper or semen paper, folded to look like lightning bolts that hang from sacred gates. And the word wada wada likely comes from the wada ropes that hold the shide. It also comes from the word for creepy crawly and laugh out loud, wada wada. These fat wada ropes with white shide, they're more commonly called shimenawa, and they might as well be symbolic of semen and penis. Also, the gohei, the ritual wand used by a Shinto priest, dressed all in white, is a wooden pole with a bunch of shide dangling from his tip. The white drips also look like bird shit, which is funny because the word for gate, tori, literally means where the birds are. So these wada ropes and shide, they make any space, object, or person a sacred gate. They mark a possible location for a god. This is why sumo wrestlers wear shimenawa belts as an invitation to the gods, and as an abstract version of Takashi Murakami's 1998 sculpture Lonesome Cowboy, and I'll let you look up that one on your own. It's not safe for work. The paper streamers look like toilet paper as they wrap Natsuko and Mahito up like mummies. Mommy! What kind of ritual is going on in this secret room? This temenos? On top of all these complicated Japanese symbols are a bunch of tiny white building blocks that fill the wrinkly stone that floats in front of Great Uncle's head like his one remaining testicle. Layered metaphors create a deep map of cultural symbols, erotic dreams, personal archetypes, and legit memories from lost time. This is a fairy tale, after all, and Miyazaki, who is sensitive A sensitive artist is picking up on signals from the deep. Seeds are like living stones. And the Shinto view of life's origin, of Jimmu and goddesses and rice spirits, it's really responding to the Buddhist one, where rice resembles sacred relics. In one myth history, the cremated body of the fully God, fully man Shakyamuni Buddha left behind a handful of tiny crystals that look just like rice. Some claim they are rice, and there are people who think Bodhidharma's eyelids became tea plants. But this idea of a rice relic complex was pushed in Japan by Kukai, the founder of Shingon Buddhism, Esoteric Buddhism, and Kukai supported it by this linguistic connection between rice and relic in Sanskrit, as well as rice's bony materiality. And there's one medieval text that anthropomorphizes rice to connect it to death and sex. From the Kanjo Imyo Kuketsu, quote, "The relics of the Buddha of the past change into rice grains, and the rice grains engage in sexual acts to perpetuate the existence of sentient beings." End quote. We can see how the continuity of the soul is likened to agriculture and old seeds being planted and transforming into new seeds that are harvested. Karma is also described in this way. And the great uncle, world traveler, lover of books, bibliophile, he would have read famous Japanese treatises that also describe the future Buddha, Maitreya, as taking the form of rice relics. I think it's also interesting that, according to Miyazaki's film, the dark, shadowy, spectral ancestors that arrive on the boats, they actually digest the monster poop for us. So our souls actually have to eat ghost excrement to grow. And we're not only food, we are spirits who need to eat. Spirits who themselves are believed to be the end product of digestion, the clarified cream or ghee of the rice. And at this point, there's no real inside or outside. This is the unconscious space of lost memory, where substances like semen, rice, milk, blood, bones, relics, food, even ghosts, are not separate entities but permutations of each other. Fluids inside the body mix with and relate to fluids outside the body, and they all blend and support life and consciousness. I really like what George Santayana says about the soul, that it is but the last bubble of a long fermentation in the world. And anthropologist Stephen Trenson says, in fact, the Shingon text clearly suggests that the souls of the dead are at the same time in the grains. And quote, "By offering or eating cooked rice empowered by a mantra, one can prevent these souls from becoming hungry ghosts, and instead cause them to be reborn in Maitreya's paradise," end quote. Trenson also says that this idea that rice is not just food for the dead, but also the abode of their souls, goes back to India, where, quote, 10 rice balls are offered for 10 days after death to allow the deceased to acquire a new body and escape becoming a hungry ghost, end quote. And he adds that the dead spirits are supposed to enter the rice. So I want to pivot really fast. Mahito manages to smuggle out a pearly piece of his great uncle's world. And in Shingon Buddhism, arguably the most esoteric and Japanese form of Buddhism, promoted specific teachings about rice and semen magic. And in the sect, the Tachikawa Ryu, a student eats his master's semen as a means for mind-to-mind transmission. And semen here is, remember, clarified rice. And there is also a theory that originally after an emperor died, the new one had to literally eat part of the previous emperor's corpse to fully receive the lineage. So continuity involves food rituals, and humans are a type of food, and semen is a type of food. And the church father Epiphanius reported that early Christians also practiced semen-eating rituals. The Borborites believed that semen was the Eucharistic body blood of Christ, and they made sure to never waste it. Members of the modern St. Priapus Church consume semen as a form of worship, and Clement de Saint Mark, in 1906 presents a really convincing argument as to why Jesus actually asked his disciples to eat his jizz, or living water, at the Last Supper. It's soul, eat this so that I may live in you forever. And it's not as weird as it sounds. Doctors, male doctors and scientists in antiquity loved telling people all about the value of semen, its relationship to life and health, and even to mind and memory. And they believed that both male and female bodies produced semen, but only males made enough to pass on to their children. So he contributed bones and eternal soul, the white stuff, while she contributed all the rest, the red parts, the flesh and the meat. And hey, before microscopes were invented, can we really blame people for believing this? The patriarchy, but also the materiality of semen, its oily, pearly shininess, was a testament to its divinity. And its resemblance to rice gruel, sealed the deal in Japan. There's also a folk medical note that 6 bowls of rice creates 1 drop of semen. Tangentially, Onuki Tierney points out that the key role of the emperor had nothing to do with the military, but actually was to enact the Oname Sai, the rice harvest ritual, which involved a mitama shizume, or a purification of the soul, where the emperor lies down on a secret bed, and then 2 women, quote, receive the emperor's soul as it's departing from his body and renew it, end quote. And I think that's obviously sexual. Also, we should keep in mind that Japanese writers, they like to emphasize that from a Shinto perspective, the human soul can easily separate from the body at any time. Also, it waxes and wanes like a moon, and it needs to eat. Judeo-Christian souls, or Abrahamic souls, or Western conceptions of the soul, on the other hand, it's generally unchanging. It's fully anchored in the body, and it's not tied to anything as terrestrial as eating and defecating. At any rate, the symbolism in the film connects the building block in Mahido's pocket to semen, but also more likely to a souvenir, memento, an omamori, a protector charm, protecting memories. And I'm reminded of the letter stones in the film Departures, passed between father and son. The Jewish version might be the mystical manna, the food of the angels, the bread of heaven. The white stuff, God fed his chosen people in the desert when there was nothing else to eat. Manna, from the Hebrew word meaning, what is it? A jar of it is supposedly kept within the Ark of the Covenant, right next to Aaron's budding rod. White stuff, it's what people had to survive on. Some scholars think manna, if it's like a literal food, could represent semen or dehydrated milk, or it's likely white insect poop or honeydew that was collected on plants. And this further strengthens the soul rice poop connection made in The Boy and the Heron. It's interesting that the white part of rice is called endosperm, and in Japanese endosperm is hainyu, literally ovule milk. And rice replaces milk as a child's first food, okuizome, and rice gruel looks just like semen. So we can see how these 2 cultural substances, they resonate in their pearliness and texture, and they inform our experience of white wada wada. They are an unconscious neurochemical bundling or resonance that colors our experience of the wada wada. We are what we eat, and in Japan, rice is everyone's first food and their last. It's a funeral food or a mortuary object. And great uncle is dying after all, and rice's centrality in Japanese funerals informs his fantasies of the soul of Wada Wada, I imagine. Stuart E. Thompson in Death, Food, and Fertility points out how rice in East Asia associates with bones and ancestral stuff, not only because it's hard and white, but because it's grown on the land, inherited from our ancestors. He adds that bones and rice are connected directly to your ancestors through your father's semen. And he says at funerals, quote, "The transmission from deceased to heirs is often symbolized in terms of apportioning rice," end quote. Food and bone also relate in the most important funeral ritual, the kotsuage, when chopsticks are used to transfer bones from the cremation box into the urn, and then the same chopsticks are inserted into a bowl of rice and left erect, which is something that's never done outside of a funeral. It's taboo. But before that happens, sometimes the makura kazari, the pillowside decoration, is offered to the corpse, and this includes a bowl of rice, rice dumplings, and rice paper. And it's got to remain next to the body for 3 days. And then rice and all of its many products become the perpetual food for ghosts. And this is through the local shrines or the fancy living room alcoves that people have. Anyway, Buddhists don't really believe in a soul per se, and instead they talk about a life force or a vital essence drop that is spread throughout the body, quote, "in numerous subtle channels as the support for life and consciousness," end quote. And in tantric Buddhist practices in Mikkyo, one imagines this radiant jewel of liquid light descending from the sky and entering the top of the head, and then it drops down into the stomach, plants itself, then grows in size until its arms fill your arms and its legs fill your legs, and then its entire body fills your body with luminous awareness. And you can purportedly feel this vital essence drop right now as your inner body. Then the Buddhists imagine the dying process as the same thing in reverse. So the life force withdraws back into the center of the body, shrinking down into a tiny white blob who floats up and leaves the body at the top of the head like a wada wada. And then this extremely subtle, seminal dream drop mind essence remains in limbo for 49 days until it re-enters a human womb if it's lucky. Light a candle for it. Wada wada are arguably a cartoony version of this drop essence. It's the same teardrop shape that sits atop a Gorinto 5-ring totem called the Kudin, the space ring. And it's the same flaming jewel, Kaien Hoju, that appears on the top of Buddhist temples. Some say the Kaien Hoju is the shape of a reliquary. Looks like a wada wada on fire. When we zoom out, there's a possibility that the wada wada storyline is like a myth. It's like a mythic vision. It's a compression of millions of years of evolution into a single image. It's like a visual recap of all life on the planet. Might even be panspermia. They arrive in a stone after all. And in the spirit of ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny, the stages of the wada wada could even represent stages of a fetus in the womb. Medieval Japanese authors remarked on how the germinating rice grain resembles a fetus. And the Wikipedia description of endosperm reads just like an embryology textbook. Also, I don't know if it's related, but the Hopi call humans corn walking. And the influential Greek physician, Claudius Galen, taught that the human embryo is more vegetable than animal. Quote, "The fetus has first of all the vegetative power. Look at it this way. This plant is going to become an animal not by losing the power that it had from the beginning, but by acquiring another one." End quote. We transcend and include all of our stages of evolution. So we are plants first and foremost. And the white rice, the white wada wada, white building blocks, white bones, white semen, white milk, white relics, and white bird poop, they all resonate within the Japanese imagination to become symbolic siblings that are somehow related to the imperial soul and the body of Buddha. White is also the Japanese color for death. Lining up all these themes and symbols in the imagination, the entire story starts to resemble a 5-ringed Gorinto totem, these striking 3D cosmograms that are used in memorials and in cemeteries. And as a stack of balanced shapes, Gorinto resemble Great Uncle's world and his white building blocks. And they represent Sai no Kawara, the stacked rocks children have to make who are in hell for causing so much suffering on the surface. And if they complete 3 stacks, they get out of hell, but demons keep showing up to knock them down. It's like how pelicans keep showing up to destroy the Wada Wada towers. And this is why Japanese people stack stones in gardens and sacred sites, and it's one reason why Gorinto look like stacked stones. Through some form of sympathetic magic, we on the surface can help baby souls by stacking stones ourselves. At the very least, it distracts the demons. I do wonder where the alien meteorite came from. Stones, especially ones that fall to Earth, are gods, but in Japan more specifically, stones are places where a god can dwell. And this arguably leads to a belief in stones that are animate or alive, and stones that can grow like crystals. And this idea takes shape in Japanese rock gardens, and also in the Japanese national anthem about a stone that grows into a boulder covered in moss. Stones are like seeds. But Wada Wada are more like bubbles. Maybe they come from stone, we come from stone, but we're also stone's opposite. We're bubbles. I love the symmetry and isomorphism when high in his tower above, Great Uncle is decorated in the eyes from the monsters below. And he sits like Rodin's The Thinker, who is Dante, sitting atop his gates of hell, and he can see how all these symbols visualize a complicated network of Japanese beliefs. Also, remember, they probably represent the subliminal superimposition of dream images from an alien meteorite collaborating with everybody, including Great Uncle. I think the film is telling us that we are deep down, somehow, stone, sperm, egg, food, feces, bubbles, and reincarnating Buddhas all at once. Human souls are botanical, seminal, and scatological. We are fermented bubbles of joyful awareness along for one hell of a ride, and take a deep breath. In a mere 2 hours of film, Miyazaki brings together all of these religious Japanese symbols and poop, which is the most abject, monstrous substance of all. And if art is prophetic, as they say, then what do you think this film is preparing us for? Please share your ideas in the comments. Bukake literally means splash, and it's a food term, and Kazuhiko Matsumoto's 1998 term for the Japanese pornography trend. If you've been to Japan, you know that images of breasts and faces covered in semen appear on magazine covers in convenience stores. I mean, everybody's seen them. It was a workaround for the censorship laws at the time. And so this Japanese visual joke is definitely there at the climax. And the characters are elated. Also, if you want to read more about rice in Japanese religion, be sure to check out Emiko Onuki Tierney's 2003 book, Rice's Self. It's all there. And I also read Stephen Trenson's 2018 article, Rice, Relics, and Jewels, in the Japanese Journal of Religious Studies, volume 45, subtitled The Social Lives and Afterlives of Sacred Things in Japan. I also read The Body by Yasuo Yuasa, and The Body as Spirit by Ishikawa Hiroshi. And both authors argue that the Japanese body is experienced firsthand, phenomenologically, not as a heavy meat object, but as a bright space and opening, like a spirit lighter than air.